Let's get the latest on the ground now from France 24's James Andre, who joins us from the Syrian capital. It's great to have you, James. So you've spoken to many people in the time that you've been in Syria, including the country's former prime minister. How did you manage to do that?
Yes, well, absolutely. With Julie Dunkelhoff and Sofia Amara, we were lucky enough to manage to have a sit-down interview with Mohammad al-Jalali. Now, he is the ousted prime minister. He was the prime minister of Bashar al-Assad. At the moment, he fled the country. And it's true that details are starting to emerge as to how all this happened. But let's start with listening to what Mr. al-Jalali had to tell us.
The army completely collapsed, and so did its defenses in Aleppo. Then the forces retreated towards Hama. In Hama, they fought for 24, maybe 48 hours. The Syrian regime is a little strange. In the end, Bashar al-Assad wasn't communicating much with anyone, including myself, his prime minister. Messages were scarce. As prime minister, I was scared because it was an authoritarian regime, a dictatorship. We did speak. I can't say there was no communication, but he was stubborn. He listened to no one. He didn't trust anyone, so much so that any move could be misinterpreted. We lived in a state of permanent fear, wondering how he might react. That night, I wasn't sure Bashar al-Assad had left the country. In fact, I tried to contact him through the palace's switchboard. I don't have his personal line. I called twice, no one answered.
هو في الحقيقة تواصلت أنا مع الرقم هناك رقم نتصل وليس بشكل مباشر أرجو.
Isolated in a sense, he was in a bit of a paranoid mood. He was not listening to anyone. The Prime Minister told us during that interview that indeed the security and the intelligence services had briefed him on the fact that basically everything was collapsing. And he told us that indeed in a phone call, he was the one to tell Bashar al-Assad, look, the army has gone, there is no more army. He also told us that Bashar al-Assad had not told him that he was intending on leaving the country and that indeed he himself took the job just a few months ago and basically was crossing fingers that he would not get it because indeed he felt it would definitely be complicated and he'd rather not be Prime Minister in such a time of turmoil, but that you cannot really say no to Bashar al-Assad, or at least you couldn't in those days. But what's interesting with these interviews is that what you understand is that the picture that everyone's painting is very much the same, with basically Hayat al-Sham preparing its offensive for years, gathering intelligence, arming itself, getting indeed the backing of countries including Turkey as well, and then indeed at the time the actual offensive takes place, well, the allies of the Assad regime, Russia, Iran, not coming in to help, and then eventually the whole regime collapsing very rapidly with indeed Bashar al-Assad simply fleeing and not telling anyone.
Really interesting revelations there from the former prime minister.